Salutations, everybody. It is Matty here today, and look out for that comment section. This is going to be an emotional one. We're talking about BioWare, which usually gets things a little spicy, but we're also talking about BioWare in a post-layoff state. We're talking about BioWare with VeilGuard sales numbers in hand, and we're talking about BioWare right now with a skeleton crew working on the next Mass Effect game and effectively tasked with saving the studio. No pressure at all. So some sides feel vindicated. Some sides feel very angry about what's happening with BioWare. We're going to sit here right in the middle, look at the facts. I'll offer my thoughts as we go along here. I'm looking forward to seeing yours, and no doubt it's going to be clean down there, isn't it? And of course, you can already tell by the length of the video, I got a lot to say, but first, let's talk about today's sponsor. The following video is sponsored by War Thunder, which is the most comprehensive vehicle combat game ever made, and it's available now for free on PC, consoles, and mobile devices. What I love about this game is so many different options to play. There's so many different modes. There's arcadey for people like me who just want fast-paced mechanics, really good vehicle performance. It's simplified physics, but there's also a simulator mode for those who are into that, which ditches all the guardrails for the ultimate challenge, and a realistic mode, which is just the perfect middle ground. So any type of player you are, there is something for you here in War Thunder. There's an impressive X-ray view when you destroy vehicles. It's really cool, really satisfying. There's a new mobile version so you can play War Thunder wherever, and you're gonna have a lot of options while playing War Thunder because there's over 2,500 tanks, planes, helicopters, and ships across over 10 major nations. So what are you waiting for? Check out the link in the description down below to play War Thunder for free on PC, PlayStation, Xbox, or mobile. Take your pick. And there is also a great offer for those of you signing up through the link down below because you'll get a massive bonus pack. This is for new and returning players who haven't played in at least 6 months. Do keep in mind this is only for PC and console players. There's also a mobile link, so wherever you want to play, you're covered. That'll include multiple premium vehicles and an exclusive vehicle decorator, plus 100,000 silver lions and 7 days of a premium account. So what are you waiting for? Check out the link down below, and shout out to War Thunder for sponsoring today's video. So let's start off at the top with VeilGuard sales numbers because it really starts to paint a picture of this sequence of events. And if you're like me and you watch, say, other game developers on YouTube, such as Mark Dara, who spent 20 plus years at BioWare, you could see it was in the tea leaves that something significant was about to happen with BioWare, because in that video, he talked about the different phases of BioWare. There was like a growth phase, there was a consuming phase, a sustained phase, a contracting phase, and they are now finding themselves in the one project phase. And effectively in that video, he broke down how BioWare used to be a multi-project studio. As we already know, the Mass Effect, the Dragon Age, you had, of course, Star Wars, like all these things were in the mix. We saw in those early 2000s how they were bouncing between things like even Jade Empire. Of course, before that, you have Baldur's Gate, Neverwinter Nights, like they were all over the place. But as time went on and these projects demanded more resources, it would kind of siphon from other projects, and you'd have like your Anthems or your Andromedas. And so this video depicts that BioWare is now, for the first time in their company history, really since their first ever video game, looking down the pipe at a single video game. And obviously that can spell good things, but I don't think any of us at this point are fooling ourselves. BioWare is, even for me as a diehard fan, grew up loving all of their games. I've had problems with their last 4 releases, sorry. Yeah, like BioWare absolutely should be treated as, even if you're the biggest of fans, they need to prove it. They are 100% in a prove it phase, and they're on their last leg here, and I'm rooting for them, but they do need to show out big time with an incredible game-changing RPG, and that's a pretty big task ahead of them. Still, all the focus is on the next Mass Effect game. But how did we get here? Well, it starts with those VeilGuard sales, where EA revealed in their earnings reports in the first couple of sentences talking about global football, how it missed the mark, but they say at the bottom here, separately, Dragon Age engaged approximately 1.5 million players during the quarter, down nearly 50% from the company's expectations. Meanwhile, if you go to the BioWare blog post for the latest set of patch notes for Dragon Age VeilGuard, they write at the top, and again, this is before any changes were announced to the BioWare studio, "Hey everyone, thank you all for playing Dragon Age VeilGuard. We were so happy with the game's stability at launch and hope you enjoyed our quality of life patches since then. With the game being in a stable place, we are moving to monitor for any game-breaking bugs. Should those occur, Dareth Sharal," effectively signaling that all support for Dragon Age VeilGuard is done, which shouldn't surprise anybody. They confirmed before launch that there wouldn't be any DLC whatsoever. But what we have here is an interesting, downright fascinating even figure when you look at the history of BioWare. 1.5 million players. And that is what I call Microsoft speak. Microsoft hides their sales numbers because likely those sales numbers aren't good. So they speak in broader terms like player count, engagement, that sort of thing. EA, however, does not do that typically unless it's been a failure. We'll note some of that similar language with other supposed failures from BioWare. For Dragon Age the Veilguard to have approximately 1.5 million players suggests that you're talking about just over 1 million sales, maybe some people engaging with like the EA Origin trial and then dipping out. This game did not do well at all. And that's not me dooming. That's not me hating. These are unfortunately the facts. And this is compared to a lineage of failures from BioWare in their last few games. We're talking about Anthem, which sold over 5 million copies. So Anthem did over 2 times better than BioWare's Dragon Age the Veilguard. And Anthem is widely suggested to be BioWare's biggest misstep ever. Now, I'm not going to do revisionist history on it by any means. Anthem is my least favorite BioWare game, but it sold 5 million copies. Not too bad at the end of the day. You look at something like Mass Effect Andromeda, though, and you'll see some familiar terminology here, as this game was considered a failure by many, but EA does say it was a financial success. They write, year-on-year growth was driven by Mass Effect Andromeda sales captured in the quarter and by FIFA, CFO Blake Jorgensen explains. Digital net sales were $681 million, a new record for the first quarter, and up $113 million on the year-ago period. The increase reflects strength in live services together with our mobile business. In addition, Mass Effect Andromeda was a significant contributor. Full game PC and console downloads generated net sales of $111 million, 32% higher than last year. This was driven by Mass Effect Andromeda sales captured in the quarter. Industry analyst Michael Pachter had put this around 2.5 million sales, which seems about right given the numbers you're seeing here, plus the long tail sales that you get for an RPG over time. That I wouldn't be surprised if this game is actually flying a little bit closer to that like 2.7, 2.8 million range. So again, I bring this all up to put into frame for you the level of failure on a financial level that Dragon Age the Veilguard truly is, because you also have to remember that Dragon Age the Veilguard was different projects 2 times over before it got to Veilguard. So this was a long-winded development cycle, millions and millions of dollars poured into it. And of course, its marketing cycle, lots of trailers, lots of showcase presence. Like, they went in on this thing and spent a lot of money on it. And there's a number of reasons why they failed to reach their audience. Of course, if I put Veilguard in front of someone at this point in time and said, what established fantasy RPG series do you think this is part of? I don't think people would think immediately, oh, this is a Dragon Age video game. I'm not even talking about it from an Origins standpoint. Of course, Origins is my favorite Dragon Age game, but I'm just saying in the tone, in the character writing, in its line delivery, Dragon Age the Veilguard is by a mile the worst written Dragon Age game, and it's very far away from what made the series so captivating for other people. Many folks were expecting one thing and got something completely different. Detaching from the series' identity clearly hurt the title, and the audience that they ended up targeting, which was much more broad, didn't show up at all, so the series had no identity, and in turn, as you can see, the sales numbers speak for themselves. Dragon Age the Veilguard was a failure. And so with all of that data in front of us, we now get to answer the rhetorical question, what's going on with the future of Dragon Age? And the answer is simple. Nothing. I don't think EA touches this series with a 10-foot pole for the next decade at least. I think it's going to take a new golden era of BioWare to resurrect this series. And I think when it does come back, if it ever does come back, it'll be from the beginning again, because the lack of identity was Dragon Age's identity, and that was the major mistake they made with Dragon Age 2, was getting away from what Origins set up and then making an action game afterwards. And I know it was supposed to be a spin-off, but the name's there, Dragon Age 2. This was the second Dragon Age game. And Inquisition did find itself in the middle, and I think that's why it saw the most success among a couple of other reasons we'll talk about later. But Veilguard represented the exact problem the franchise had, no identity, where it left fantasy fans, Dragon Age fans, casual gamers, hardcore gamers, all confused as to what this game exactly wanted to be. It tried to appeal to everybody and in turn found no one, and that's the problem with game direction in a lot of places, not just at BioWare. It's the idea that they're trying to reach out to dozens of millions of gamers when you should really target like a core million and let them basically do all the heavy lifting for you, because word of mouth is everything in this industry. And honestly, I think clipping is everything in this industry. Social media is all the rave, and it's clear the AAA industry needs to start valuing writing more. And it looks like EA and BioWare are taking those next steps because, well, they're distancing themselves from the entire writing team of Veilguard. Which brings us to what we just saw this week from BioWare, where they have a studio update posted on their BioWare blog writing, "Hello everyone. Today, we are turning towards the future and preparing for the next chapter in BioWare's story. As we announced in August 2023, we are changing how we build games to meet the needs of our upcoming projects and hold ourselves to the highest quality standards. Now that Dragon Age: The Veilguard has been released, a core team at BioWare is developing the next Mass Effect game, under the leadership of veterans from the original trilogy including Mike Gamble, Preston Watamaniuk, apologies if I mispronounced that, Derek Watts, Parrish Lay, and others. In keeping with our fierce commitment to innovating during the development and delivery of Mass Effect, we have challenged ourselves to think deeply about delivering the best experience to our fans. We are taking this opportunity between full development cycles to reimagine how we work at BioWare. Given this stage of development, we don't require support from the full studio. We have incredible talent here at BioWare, and so we have worked diligently over the past few months to match many of our colleagues with other teams at EA that had open roles that were a strong fit. Today's news will see BioWare become a more agile, focused studio that produces unforgettable RPGs. We appreciate your support as we build a new future for BioWare." This is from the general manager at BioWare, Gary McKay. Now, going back to that Mark Dara video, one thing he highlights in that video is how the pipeline for BioWare would work is while you were spinning up the next project, a lot of the BioWare team would then go to DLC to kind of keep them busy, keep them working on something, but you need a player base for that, which means that if Veilguard did better than expected, maybe BioWare would have gone back on what they said pre-launch and actually spun up DLC to keep that staff employed, to keep them doing something, to feed a base that wanted more, say, Dragon Age content, but obviously that was not the case, so they were put in other places. But a lot of this is very much corporate speak for layoffs, and if you go to Blue Sky or Twitter, you'll see many posts. Karen West Weeks said, "Hello, I'm looking for work, ideally in an editor role. It's been my honor to work with so many talented professionals and a pleasure to meet so many amazing community members in my 19 years at BioWare." Trick Weeks got also laid off, saying, "I'm now looking for a new writing/narrative position. It's been a privilege to work on so many amazing games over my 20 years at BioWare, and I will cherish the memories with all the wonderful folks in the community I've met along the way. Thank you all." Jen Chevery wrote, "After almost 14 years at BioWare, I am devastated to learn today that myself and others must seek new opportunities. I'm so grateful for all of the learning, challenges, and most importantly, the team. I will remember my time here with joy. Tomorrow will move forward. For today, I will just be sad." Ryan Cormier said, "So my time at BioWare has ended. It was a wild ride with some fantastic people, but it's time to look for new challenges. I'm an editor, writer with 26 plus years of experience across video games, novels, short stories, newspapers, and marketing comms. If you know of a good fit, please let me know." Video Games 24/7 also scooped up a couple of other writers who were recently laid off or moved on from BioWare, such as Brianne Badeye as well as Cheryl Chi, who both moved over to Motive Studio. And then you have Sylvia Fekete, who is also departing BioWare as of last month after 15 years. So BioWare has completely lost the Dragon Age: The Veilguard writing team, and as we see here in the Video Games 24/7 article, they document how many of the other writers, Courtney Woods, John Dombrow, Mary Kirby, Lucas Christensen, and others, Joe Barry, had all gradually left the team over years, but were credited with their work on the Veilguard in the writing department if you check the IMDb, and all of them are now gone. BioWare's biggest strength and what I think separated them from the bunch for years and years and years was their writing team. And I feel like AAA game development has undervalued the power of writing. I talked earlier about social media and clipping, and I feel like all you need is one cringe or horrible line to kind of start the snowball effect on what exactly might be wrong with your game. You look at games that do succeed, that are single player role-playing games. I do think of Elden Ring. I do think of Baldur's Gate. Like, these aren't just oops-a-daisy moments. These are games that are extremely well written, among many other things, of course, but their writing conveys a really strong and interesting world for the player to invest themselves in. So for such an established franchise with a massive marketing arm behind it to barely crawl over 1 million sales, I think this is why EA and BioWare are distancing themselves or moving this talent around. Of course, some of them they're going to want to bring back as the Mass Effect project scales up, but they're likely going to be so deeply rooted in their own projects that I don't think they're actually going to come back. One thing this Video Games 24/7 article also mentions is that the targets that EA set for it financially were overzealous, but I don't think with the data I provided here, and I've seen others saying this similar mindset of like Dragon Age of Veilguard was put in an uphill battle. I'm like, what are you talking about? When you look at the entire series and what kind of sales it's brought through the door and the amount of marketing that Veilguard had go on for it, it had every right to pass the 3 million mark, especially if previous BioWare failures were anything to go by. Like unmitigated disasters such as Andromeda and Anthem surpassed Veilguard by a mile. So as much as I feel for the team at BioWare, and it does suck to see people's lives affected, as I say, it's a performance-based industry, and that does mean that if these numbers are not up to snuff, not by, I think, unfair standards, I'm the last person to defend EA, but I don't think it's unfair to say, hey, this AAA game that was in development for like 7-8 years needs to sell 3 million copies because we need to earn our investment back on this thing and try to break even after multiple failures from BioWare. I don't think this is the worst figure in the world, especially when you look at the previous figures in the series and how Veilguard was just only slightly above what exactly Dragon Age 2 had done, which was the worst Dragon Age game to many people. I think that was very fair, all things considered. Veilguard could have been put at a 5 million mark because of what happened with Dragon Age Inquisition, which skyrocketed to 12+ million sales, but Veilguard being at a target of 3 is overzealous. I don't agree with that at all, and I think the people who are saying that, I understand our feeling for BioWare, but I do think you can be realistic about the situation and still have a heart for BioWare at the end of the day. And last but not least, before all of these individuals was the game director of Veilguard, Corinne Bush, who left BioWare saying, my departure was voluntary as I have been presented with an opportunity I couldn't turn down. I don't want to say much more right now, but you can count on it being in the CRPG space and upholding the tradition of great characters. I did what I wanted to do at BioWare. That is to come in, help right the ship. I love Dragon Age and BioWare, so the chance to return the game to a proper quality single-player RPG was the privilege of a lifetime. Layoffs are always tough to talk about in the gaming space because it's a very sensitive subject matter, and many of the fans that play the games are very brash about it. I look at it a lot like sports. I don't know how many people who are watching this video watch sports, but it is a human element to it all, of course. You know, we hope these people land right on their feet and find new positions. But at the same time, it's a performance-based industry. And when the product doesn't perform the way things are now, the leaders aren't held accountable. We've seen it with things like Pete Parsons over at Bungie buying a bunch of vehicles and stuff while tons and tons of people get laid off, and significant talent that made Bungie what it was got let go. And I know there's a lot of anger and vitriol slung toward BioWare, mainly because people do think a lot of the BioWare talent that made BioWare so great in the early 2000s is gone, but many of them were still there and are gone now. And also the people who we'll get into who are working on the next Mass Effect project have also been there since KOTOR 1, as well as Jade Empire, and of course Mass Effect 1. So there's still some long tenured employees there. So the question really is, with those employees that made the game so great, what went wrong? Well, of course, there were talent like Casey Hudson or James Olin who did leave and never came back. But we are in an era of social media. We are in an era of clipping. It's really easy to take a cringe moment, for example, out of a video game, post it online, and let the snowball begin. And I think that is where AAA gaming really undervalues writing. It can sour so many games before they really even have a chance to show themselves, right? I think of Gotham Knights as another example where just some of the writing in that game, I'm just like, how did this get greenlit? And with Dragon Age the Veilguard, it tried to represent underrepresented communities. And as I documented in my review, I think they did not do a great job with that. And I say that more confidently now, especially after finishing Metaphor ReFantazio, which interestingly tackles a lot of similar themes and ideas that Veilguard wanted to explore. But again, it goes back to the hard reality that's difficult to talk about, which is this is a performance-based industry. And unfortunately, you're going to have a stronger reception to something like Metaphor, which pushes forward similar ideas because Metaphor was incredibly well written, or even Baldur's Gate 3, which is incredibly well written, versus something like Veilguard, which feels like you're slamming a circle into a square hole. And I personally wouldn't be surprised with the current US administration if part of BioWare's recent moves was, to fall more in line like a lot of other companies are with the way things are trending, just like when things were trending a completely different direction and a lot of corporations fell in line with that. Now they're going the opposite direction, and so they're going to align themselves more with those values, even if they are a Canadian-based company. But now, who remains at BioWare? Well, Shinobi602 had a great write-up documenting who's who here. He writes, Mass Effect will continue. The studio is now fully focused on developing the next game, and it's under the leadership of core team of veterans from the original trilogy, led by Mike Gamble, who is the executive producer going back to Mass Effect 2. The game director, Preston Watamaniuk, is a 24-year veteran and was the lead designer on the Mass Effect trilogy, KOTOR, and Neverwinter Nights. The art director is Derek Watts, who is the art director for the original Mass Effect trilogy. The creative director is Parrish Lay, who is the lead cinematic and presentation animator going back to Mass Effect 1. The narrative director is Mary DeMarle, who is helming the story and was lead writer on Deus Ex Human Revolution and Mankind Divided, as well as Eidos Montreal's Guardians of the Galaxy. And the studio is taking this opportunity between full development cycles to reimagine how they work at BioWare. It's tough because this is the heart versus the brain moment. Like, my heart wants BioWare to be great. And my brain looks at this and goes, well, you can't really ask for more. Like, people are like, give me OG BioWare. I mean, there it is. That's OG BioWare. They've stripped down all of the fat. It's a skeleton team assembling this. And the biggest hurdle I think BioWare is going to have to overcome is not having a messy development cycle. Obviously delivering a great game is a whole separate conversation. We'll assess that whenever, if we ever see the next Mass Effect game. But really, when you look at the last number of development cycles out of BioWare, Veilguard, Anthem, as well as Andromeda, all of them extremely troubled. Way longer development cycles than they ever had any right to be. Like, Andromeda was in development for 7 years. I think Anthem was closing in on 8 years. And everyone knows I'm not like a big EA defender. They've definitely turned the corner in my eyes a lot with their ability to spread the wealth a bit of, like, single player games. And of course their live service and sports games, which I don't think are very good outside of College Football 25. That was pretty fun. That felt new. That felt different. That felt good. But otherwise, like, I like what they've done with Respawn. I do appreciate that despite BioWare floundering, they've tried to give them as many leases on life as they can. But I always feel like EA has been the scapegoat for a lot of BioWare's mismanagement. And so the best thing I can see about tearing it all down is to truly see what was deeply problematic with BioWare. Are the people who remain, were they the problem? Was that the case at this point? Or is it something else? We'll learn. We'll find out. But the reality is I don't think this development cycle can go like prior BioWare games where you hear like, oh, they were making this one thing and then turned into this. Games are like a kid, right? Like as you raise your kid, you watch them become their own person with their own interests and tastes and everything like that. It's very similar to that. Like games, you'll have a design document and you'll start with the ideas, and as you play it, those ideas will evolve and the game will change, no doubt about it. But you have to start with like a really strong core, and that's what BioWare needs right now. It's like they have to have like a set of ideas that they will not deviate from at all. Otherwise, if this game goes left and they're like, no, we're actually going to go ahead and do this, I don't know if EA is going to continue to let them mess around. Because what I've said for a long while is that Respawn's right there. And I could be wrong, but I do think that EA wanted BioWare to be what Respawn is. Like, Respawn has Apex Legends. Respawn has the Star Wars Jedi series, which sold 10 plus million copies multiple times. Like, they have their great single player games that produce great revenue. They have their live service cash. They're working on a little bit of Battlefield. They're working on everything. It got Vince Zampella there. Like, they're on cloud 9 right now. And then when you look at BioWare and their trajectory of like, here's your live service game, Anthem, and here's like some multiplayer modes, Mass Effect 3, as well as Inquisition and Andromeda, and like, here's your single player stuff. Like, BioWare tried to be that, but they were never meant to be that. They've always been destined to be the hardcore single player RPG studio, but lost so much talent in that transition. So I feel like if you're EA and you're looking at what your single player studios are capable of, you might not hold on to the past for much longer because, Respawn has effectively replaced what BioWare was to EA, who owns them, right? It's different for us, fans who have, memories with all these different games. Very different case there, I think, at least. But when it comes to EA, who's just looking at their pocketbook, they're going to look at this and be like, why do we need this company if we've got another that's kind of filling the void? So a lot of thoughts on this one, man. Obviously, I'll be watching and monitoring and covering whatever's happening with Mass Effect. They are, of course, planning a Mass Effect TV show as well. So the real big hope is that Mass Effect pops off for BioWare. I mean that, like, if you're EA. Of course, for us, we just want something good, but we'll see. We'll see. Got a lot of thoughts and feelings on BioWare, as you already know, but I'm curious to get yours, so fire away down below. Other than that, take excellent care of yourselves, and I will see you in the next video. Stay sexy, stay active. I love you all. Peace. And in case anyone forgot, we still have War Thunder, which is linked down below. Play on whatever platform you want, from console to PC to mobile, and claim your rewards now.